What you're about to hear is not fiction. It's one of the most disturbing, haunting, and chilling cases in the history of crime. A man who confessed to killing over 300 young girls across 3 countries. A man the world forgot, until it was too late. This is the story of Pedro Alonso Lopez, also known as the Monster of the Andes. Between 1969 and 1980, hundreds of young girls began disappearing from remote villages and towns in Colombia, Peru, and Ecuador. Families were devastated. Police were overwhelmed. Many assumed the girls had run away or become victims of local conflict. But behind the scenes, something much darker was unfolding. A predator was on the loose, one with an unimaginable appetite for violence. Pedro Lopez was born in 1948 in Tolima, Colombia. His childhood was marked by trauma. His mother was a sex worker, and his father was reportedly killed in a civil conflict before Lopez was born. At just 8 years old, Pedro ran away from home, only to be picked up by a man who offered him shelter and then raped him. This moment, according to Lopez himself, changed everything. He would later say, "I lost my innocence and I made a vow that day to make others suffer the way I had suffered." By his late teens, Lopez was living on the streets of Bogotá. He survived by stealing cars, selling stolen goods, and engaging in petty crime. At 18, he was arrested for auto theft and sentenced to 7 years in prison. It was in prison that the full horror of his mind began to emerge. After being assaulted by fellow inmates, Lopez claimed he hunted down and killed 3 of his attackers. He would later say these murders gave him a thrill that never left. When he was released in the early 1970s, he began his killing spree. Lopez traveled extensively between Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. He targeted young girls between the ages of 8 and 12, often luring them away from markets, schools, or isolated paths. Many of the towns had no local police, no resources, and little media attention. What made him especially terrifying was his ability to blend in. He appeared calm, almost meek, earning the trust of his victims before leading them into remote areas where he'd strike. He later claimed that he sometimes murdered 3 girls a week. In 1980, a stroke of luck changed everything. A flash flood in Ecuador unearthed the bodies of several missing girls. Investigators were led to Pedro Lopez, who was caught trying to abduct another child from a market. Once in custody, Lopez didn't resist. In fact, he confessed to everything, over 300 murders. He even offered to show authorities the graves of his victims. Ecuadorian police were horrified. Most had never heard of a serial killer like this, let alone someone who admitted to hundreds of killings across multiple countries. In 1983, Pedro Lopez was convicted of the murders of 110 girls in Ecuador. But here's where it becomes even more disturbing. Despite his crimes, the maximum sentence in Ecuador at the time was just 16 years. That's right, 16 years for 110 confirmed murders. Due to good behavior, he was released after 14 years. After his release in 1994, Lopez was deported to Colombia. There, he was briefly held in a psychiatric hospital. Doctors declared him no longer a danger to society. In 1998, Pedro Lopez was released and disappeared. To this day, no one knows where he is. He would be 76 years old now. Some believe he's dead. Others think he's still out there, living under a false identity. Authorities have confirmed he's still wanted in Colombia for a 2002 murder, but he's never been found. Pedro Lopez's case exposes major failures in the justice systems of multiple countries. Poor record-keeping, lack of communication between nations, and laws that didn't account for serial offenders all allowed him to continue. Rural communities didn't have the infrastructure to respond to missing persons cases. And Lopez knew this. He used it to his advantage. He once said in an interview, "I like the girls in Ecuador. They are more gentle and trusting, more innocent." It's one of the most chilling quotes ever recorded from a serial killer. Many of Lopez's victims have never been identified. Some families never found out what happened to their daughters. Others still live with the agony of not knowing. Though he confessed to over 300 murders, only about 110 bodies were ever recovered. The rest are presumed dead. The story of Pedro Lopez is not just the story of a killer. It's a story of forgotten children, of overlooked communities, of systemic failure. And it's a reminder that evil doesn't always look monstrous. Sometimes, it looks like a quiet man in a crowd, waiting. If this story shocked you, you're not alone. Cases like these deserve to be remembered, not just for the killer, but for the victims who were never given justice. Let us know in the comments, should cases like Pedro Lopez be reinvestigated? And don't forget to subscribe for more true crime stories from around the world.